3 years ago, my younger brother Tom was driving to volunteer at a hospital in West St. Louis County, less than a month after his 16th birthday. My parents had driven him to this hospital before, but this was the first time he was driving alone. Well, almost alone. He had Google Maps directing him. At 5:30 that evening, my parents received a call that Tom had been in a fairly bad head-on collision. Fortunately, Tom is fine. Tom explained that as he was approaching the highway, the Google Map voice began to tell him firmly and repeatedly, "Make a U-turn, make a U-turn." So Tom followed these orders and made a quick U-turn right into another car. This incident made me wonder about what effect GPS has on our behavior and our society. MapQuest was one of the first mapping and navigation systems. Other companies soon realized it was in their best interest to develop their own technologies rather than simply tap into MapQuest. Companies with their own GPS systems have found they have greater control over local searches, traffic, advertising, and other user-directed media and information while keeping customers on their site. GPS is directly involved in business, especially in marketing and advertising. Retail establishments pay to be at the top of online searches. Our smartphone may direct us to a nearby gas station, but the last time I tried it, my phone ignored the family-owned gas station I was passing and directed me to a mobile station 2 miles away. GPS is being used to tell us where we should go and spend our money. This brings up the warning of Eli Pariser in his TED Talk when he warns us to beware of the filter bubble. Google searches use an algorithm that looks at 57 different variables and choosing what information we are allowed to see. We are giving up some degree of control when we allow technology to decide what information we are given, which should be concerning to all of us. And what other problems can come from our location being so easy for others to find? A friend of my parents had a man stalking her, and after the stalker showed up at various places she tried to hide, the police discovered a GPS tracking device had been placed on her car. GPS technology represents a huge societal shift in a person's ability to be found when they don't want to be. Privacy will certainly be a concern as GPS technology is more widely used. In a February 2016 research article in the Public Library of Science, 75 men who have sex with men voluntarily agreed to carry a GPS device to help test how well GPS may be used to understand the spatial context of high-risk behaviors, areas the men likely avoided while knowingly being tracked. It seems likely that as GPS technology advances, researchers will want to monitor the movement of a similar cohort of men who are not aware they are being tracked. At the end of the article, they discuss as a possible future study the incorporation of GPS data for men on gay smartphone apps, such as Grindr, which would make it difficult for men on such sites to be able to maintain their privacy. With every positive aspect of technology comes negative aspects. Sociologist George Ritzer describes these positive and negative progressions in society as McDonaldization. McDonald's is very popular and successful because of their increased efficiency, predictability, calculability, and control through non-human technology. However, these four positives each have a negative aspect as well. As far as efficiency, anytime we rely on a GPS device, we are given directions through the route that orbiting satellites will tell us is the most efficient. If a human being were giving us directions, he or she may recommend driving by a lake or over a beautiful bridge through a life-filled meadow. Instead, we are directed to the nearest highway to arrive a minute or two earlier than the scenic route would allow us. Many people appreciate the predictability of McDonald's. Whether you order a Big Mac in Santa Clara or Paris, you're not likely to see a difference. GPS is similarly predictable. The problem with McDonald's is the limited menu prevents customers from trying a wide variety of foods. Similarly, GPS is not designed to offer a variety of routes to experience, but almost always directs you along the same routes. Calculability has to do with how we expect our McDonald's order to come quickly and cheaply. We also expect the GPS on our phone to give us instant and free directions. This calculability can be a problem if GPS is incorrect or unavailable, and we suddenly have to calculate new ways to find our destination, such as buying a road map, if we can find one and afford it, especially if our Apple Pay doesn't work either. A major aspect of McDonaldization that is also true of GPS is control through the use of non-human technology. People now accept the fact that they are taking directions from an electronic voice coming from their phone. People assume the turn-by-turn directions are correct. GPS technology is also used to direct you toward the stores, restaurants, and other businesses they want you to go to. Ritzer also says that rational systems inevitably spawn irrationalities. The rationality of McDonald's providing nutrition can develop into the irrationality of McDonald's serving grossly unhealthy meals, and then supersizing them. The rationality of GPS to provide safe directions can develop into the irrationality of Google Maps directing a 16-year-old driver to turn into oncoming traffic. The McDonaldization of GPS has resulted in an overall lack of spontaneity and adventure. Years ago, families would go for weekend drives, often with no preset destination in mind. However, these destinations do not have an address that can be plugged into a GPS device, so GPS does not direct us to some of the most beautiful destinations. Overall, GPS removes the spontaneity and magic from traveling. GPS can be bad for our minds. Several recent studies look at the effect of GPS on the brain. These studies demonstrate that using GPS navigation systems has a negative effect on brain function, especially on the hippocampus, which is involved in memory and navigation processes. In one study at McGill University, functional MRI scans were taken of older adults who were GPS users and GPS non-users. Those who do not use GPS were found to have a greater volume of gray matter in the hippocampus than those who do rely on GPS. The adults who do not use GPS also scored better on a standardized test to diagnose mild cognitive impairment, which usually precedes Alzheimer's disease. Therefore, relying on our own spatial memory more than GPS may actually help us avoid cognitive impairment as we age. Another recent study from the University of London looked at British cab drivers who have been driving taxis for 3 years or more. Functional MRI scans again demonstrated more gray matter in the hippocampus of the taxi drivers who did not rely on GPS compared to GPS users. Their daily use of spatial memory appears to benefit their brain, and they also scored higher on cognitive ability testing. It is clear that we benefit tremendously from GPS technology in today's world, but we must control its use. McDonald's is fast, cheap, and it tastes good, but if we are not careful, the irrationality of rationality can kill us. The McDonaldization of GPS technology can also kill us if we listen to it without adequate independent reasoning, or if we become so dependent on it we find ourselves unable to survive without it. We must constantly reassess our relationship with technology. It's easy to take for granted the autonomy we trade for dependence as we rely more on technology. Avoiding GPS when possible is actually good for our brain, helps us retain independence, and possibly prevents Alzheimer's. And most importantly, it's always good to remind ourselves that taking the long way home isn't always a bad thing.